Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Hi, welcome to Underdusk Minis. Today I'm going to be painting some mimics from the Underdusk Miniatures Monsters, Mimics and Mysteries box. I really quite liked the mimics, and the mysteries were some sort of dungeon dressing type things, and they were pretty cool. Not a big fan of the monsters out of this box though. Unlike some of the other ones that I got, like Wildspire and a few other boxes of cheap miniatures, they just seemed a bit fiddly or something, I don't know, but they just weren't a favourite. At any rate, the mimics though, they were great. I'm going to be painting the door and the book today. I painted both the regular door and the mimic version, and then the regular book and the mimic version of the book at the same time, so that the mimic would have the same colours as the plain version. I wanted them to blend. The colours I use are marked. They're all from Army Painter, with the exception of the pen, the acrylic pen that I use for the base, which to mark the rim of the base, which is from Mont Marte. I don't know how you pronounce that, but I've got a link to a lot of this stuff that I use in the description below. Before I go any further, I'd like to remind you to like this video if you like it. Obviously you're not going to like it if you don't. Share it if you think someone else you know might like it, and subscribe if you want to see more of this sort of thing. I had a lot of fun painting these. I like the miniatures themselves. The sculpts are really fun, and mimics are just one of those critters that I've always really liked. So having some of these was just such fun to play with. Now, as you can see, obviously I've sped up the footage. I think it's running at 8 times speed or something like that. Like with everything else I'm painting over a mini that's been primed in black, then given a zenithal, and then given the scumbling, which is really another word for heavy dry brushing of white over the top to bring out the details as much as possible while giving it shadows that do increase slowly as you get lower and lower in the figure. So the further the figure is from the imaginary light source, the darker these speed paint colours, or if you're using contrast paints or some other brand, those sorts of colours are going to get darker and darker, because as a general rule the mini itself gets darker and darker due to the zenithal approach. Now, obviously, you know, I'm not the world's best painter. I don't pretend to be. I just started again after a 40-year break. I don't tend to use regular acrylic paints with, you know, highlights and shadows and the triads and things like that. I don't have the patience for that. What I love about speed paint is that once you've got some brush control, and this is the key element here, you have to have that brush control. You have to be so careful about where you're applying the paint, and not just try and avoid getting it anywhere else. Yes, you can rub it off, and I often do. If I get it quickly enough, I'll just rub it off with my thumb if it's in the wrong spot, or I'll wet my brush, dry it a little bit, and then wipe it off with the brush if it's been there a bit longer. I'll even use a cotton bud. And that can help. You can either wet the cotton bud or just use it dry and give that a try. And generally this can help fix most problems that you come up with. The other thing to do is to have an approach of, well, a lot of these things are used in dungeons, so they're going to be a bit grubby. So if you get some of your colour in the wrong spot, well, paint over it with the other colour that was supposed to be there along with the rest of that area, and maybe it'll just look like a bit of a dirt splodge or a bit of dust or muck or whatever you think you can get away with in that sense. But generally I won't repaint the primer to cover up things unless I absolutely have to, and that is my last resort, is to come in with some white paint and paint over the bits that I've mucked up, the bits that are where I've accidentally put the colour in the wrong spot. Now, the problem with this is that the white paint is usually very, very white compared to the zenithal, dry brushing, etc. shade that I end up with. It's still bright, but it's much more subdued. It's much greyer because of the underlying black primer. So when I come along with a white fixer, it's too white. So I have to be a bit sort of careful with that as well and not overdo it. Again, having that brush control in the first place is the real key here. And it is something that I'm getting better and better at, but I'm still not perfect, and I never will be. My hands shake. I have carpal tunnel, and so things that you take for granted when you're 20 years old are very, very different when you're in your 60s. Now, as you can see here, I've tried to make these things look as realistic in their colour schemes as possible. The idea is to make it look as though it lives in the world that it lives in this fantasy world. This is an appropriate colour. I don't go necessarily for colours that pop if they don't feel right for that environment, for the world that I'm painting for. Yeah, bright colours and shiny things are really, really nice when they're appropriate, and they look better. I won't lie about that. They do. But you're not going to look better if you've just gotten off a battlefield after fighting for 8 hours. You're going to look muddy. You're going to look brown. You're going to not want to stand out by being the only dude in the in the battle that's wearing bright pink armour, Yes, this is going to look fantastic as a presentation piece, but these things are meant to look like they live in the world. Okay, as you can see in the background, I've painted these things up. These are the books. I think they look pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with the way they turned out. As I said earlier, nothing I do is perfect. I'm not a great painter. I think I'm an okay painter, and I have a lot of fun doing it. But more to the point, is it going to look good on the tabletop? And this is what I aim for here. Now, I think in this case, the book, the door, the other ones that I'd painted before I started filming, I think they look pretty good. And I'm pretty damned happy with the way they came out. I've got some more coming up in a minute that are pretty cool when they come. The grave, that was the first one I did. Notice that the tongue is a slightly different colour. It's actually blood red, and I decided that was too bright, and it's not, to me, that's not how a tongue looks. So I went for that Moon Lake coral, which is sort of a purpley, reddish, orange something. And I think that's a much better colour for for tongues. I also think those hands are a bit green. This mirror mimic was my favourite for the way it turned out. I had such fun drawing the eyes, painting the eyes. When you look at it, the eyes are red rimmed. They all have a pupil dot in them, and I was just so happy. And the pumpkin one is the last one. This one was funny because I got a new stand to hold my iPhone while I'm filming, and I set it all up, and then I forgot to actually hit record for the pumpkin. But I do really like the way the pumpkin turned out. Anyway, I'll catch you next time, and thanks for watching.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.